Hey friends, welcome to today's video. It is jam-packed with some wreath inspiration, and I am sharing my first fall pumpkin deco mesh wreath for the 2023 season. Guys, I am Tracy. I love to share crafty ideas with a bit of rustic country charm. I am so glad that you're here, and let's get started. For this wreath, I'm starting with a 14-inch wireframe. Now, this wireframe came from the Dollar Tree. The 21-inch mesh that I'm using came from Hobby Lobby. I like it to make these for my base. So this 21-inch mesh, what I do is I let it just drop down on the floor, and then I just kind of, work with it. It just works a little bit easier for me. What I'm doing is I'm attaching it there on two crossbars at the, on the inner ring. Then I go across the middle because I'm going to be including a sign on this wreath, putting a lot of stuff in here, and I don't want it to dip in. And so that's why I do that. That's just a personal preference. And so for my inner ring or my inner poofs, they're about 8 inches. And so I just kind of measure there. Yep, sure enough, they're 8 inches. And then I kind of my stopping point is when I go to like across onto the rings to the next bar on the inner ring. When I get to this part right here, I just untwist it and put that poof in there, twist it back, and then I move on where everything is on the inner ring. Then when I get all the way around, when it's time to drop down, I'll drop down to the 2 outer rings and do 10-inch poofs all the way around. Then once I get to the end, what I do is I untwist that last pipe cleaner, and then I cut off the deco mesh, and then, have 12 pipe cleaners for this, and then we'll move on to the next layer on this wreath. These are the 10-inch mesh that I'm going to be putting into this wreath. They all either came from trendytree.com, craftoutlet.com, or Hobby Lobby. So what I do is I roll it out on my mat, and I'm going to cut these at 16 inches. And so then I'm going to be making some cruffles, and how I make the cruffles is by bending over one end 2 or 3 times. I bend over the other end, and then I gather it in the middle, and then I clip it with those little clamps. Those just kind of help keep everything together. And so I figure out which, deco mesh I want together. And guys, so what helps me are these little clamps. And then also I just put them into an X pattern, and then I'm going to be putting them into the wreath, alternating them, because then once I get all of these in, then I'm going to move on to my second set of deco mesh, and that is going to be the orange and the cream, as well as the burlap. And I'm going to be cutting those at 16 inches as well, making the cruffles, and then I will go back in to my wreath and put that next layer. And this is just kind of what helps me. Each wreath maker has their own system, their own way, their own methods of doing things, and that is what's so good of finding different wreath makers to kind of, enhance your skills, to figure out what kind of style you like, and also just to inspire you to create beautiful wreaths for your home, or if you want to make it a business. So now I am putting the orange and the burlap in the other pipe cleaners. And so I have like a zigzag pattern. That's what I call it. And so then I just put those in there. Then I'm going to move on to that denim and the foil. That is kind of like my specialty mesh. Now I'm going to be just cutting that mesh at 20 inches. I'm going to be doing the cruffles as well. And so once I get finished with putting this second layer of deco mesh in there, I feel like I have like holes, like where the pipe cleaners are, with the other deco mesh. And so then that denim with the orange is going to help fill that hole. And so that is going to be what I'm going to be putting in those where those holes are. Making beautiful full wreaths like this is all about the layering. And so the next layer is the beautiful ribbons. And so all of my ribbons, I either get them from trendytree.com, Craft Outlet, Hobby Lobby, other places that I can get cute ribbon. And so always wired ribbon, or most often always wired ribbon, because it really holds its shape, and if it gets smashed you can fluff it back up. So I cut these at 13 inches and I dovetail the ends of it. And so dovetailing is just when you fold it in half and then you cut it into a V point, and so that gives a really nice finish for your ribbon. And so what I'm doing here, guys, is I am making my bundles. If you have watched me make a wreath before, this is what I do most often. If you are new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. But I like to make bundles like I did with my Deco mesh. I like to make my ribbon bundles as well. And so I figure out which patterns I want together. I use a little tiny stapler. It just puts a little teeny tiny staple in the bundle, and I clip it or I just staple it, and then I have my bundles ready to go. All right, so I'm going to be putting some raffia into my wreath as well, because this is a country fall wreath. And so this raffia came from Walmart, and I'm just making little knots out of those. And so I'm just going to be putting those in one of the bundles. All right, so I figure out which patterns I want to go into which Deco mesh. And so then I put those in. I start with whichever bundle, and then I move on to the second one. And like I said, I work in a zigzag pattern so that I keep my wreath balanced, and I put all of the patterns in there, and everything looks really nice and cohesive and just really country cute, which I like for my whimsical country wreaths. Today is the Fall Wreathathon, and it is hosted by Sweet Nadia of DIY with Nadia. She has brought us all together again to bring you some fall wreath inspiration. And guys, there will be a link in the description to the playlist of all of the other very talented wreath makers in this collaboration. I know that you're not going to want to miss it because they are amazing, and I always pick up different tips and tricks from them. So thank you so much to Nadia for bringing us all together again. For my wreaths, I do like to include a sign, and I like to hand paint or hand make my sign. So I'm using a wooden pumpkin as well as a metal pumpkin. These both came from the Dollar Tree. This metal pumpkin is like a yard stake, but I cut off that long piece. And then for the wood pumpkin, I'm going to paint that. I painted it one color of blue, but then it wasn't quite dark enough. So then I switched, gave it another layer of navy blue, and then I like that it matched my ribbon a little bit better. Okay, so then also I love to paint, and so I'm just giving a little bit of white highlight. I know some of that is going to be covered up by that metal pumpkin, but it just made me feel better because I know that it was there. And so then I want to add some wire around the edges of my pumpkin, and so I have this white wire that I don't know what gauge it is because I don't have the little tag, but what I did is I just took that off-white paint, and I just painted it because it just kind of matched my metal pumpkin a little bit more. I didn't want it to be white, and then the metal pumpkin was a little more off-white. So then what I'm doing is I'm just wrapping it around, or just kind of positioning it, curving it around, and just taking that little stapler and just stapling it down. And I love that little stapler. It just really helps me in my wreath making, just with so many different just different things that I like to do. So then I just finish up stapling that there. Now, to attach the metal pumpkin to the top of the blue pumpkin, I'm just using some silly winks. Now, you may have seen me use this before, because I like to add dimension to some of my signs. And so this silly winks is just like fun foam. I get it at Hobby Lobby. And so then I'm just going to glue it there to the back of the pumpkin. And then that gives me something for the metal sign to attach to, the blue sign. And then everything is nice and secure. These brown woven placemats are what I use to cover the back of my wreaths, to make them all covered and look nice. The silver flexible wire is something that I had on hand, and I like to make a hanger using that. And then to attach the sign to my wreath, what I like to use are 1-inch cable ties and pipe cleaners. I glue those to the back of the sign, and then I thread them through the Deco Mesh wreath with these upholstery needles, or one of the upholstery needles. I got those over at Walmart. And then that is what helps me secure everything to my wreath. For the berries and the florals, these beautiful pumpkin pit berries and this kind of neutral looking greenery came from Trendy Tree. And so what I'm going to do is just cut pieces of those apart. Then to attach them into my wreath, what I do is I use my Steel Picks machine, and it puts a little tiny or it puts a steel pick on the end, and I just, glue those in between the flaps of the Deco Mesh or in the ribbon, so that everything is nice and secure. And I just absolutely love the way that this Deco Mesh wreath turned out. I just tied a few strands of raffia around the stem of the pumpkin just to make a bow. And I love this country wreath so much. Don't forget, the playlist for the other wreath makers in this collaboration is listed in the description box below. Thanks, Nadia, for inviting me again to join you, because I had a lot of fun. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. God bless you, and we will see you in the next video. Happy wreath making.